All right, hello friends. In talking with some of you, there was some conversations popping up around table setting. So I know this looks a little bit like I've organized a game board, but I'll explain some of the tools that I used in class to promote students' understanding and students' organization and students' ability to set the table. And I used a couple different, you can see just off screen, that's my cat, Ollie, kind of keeping guard over me. Okay, so off the top, setting the table in class, a lot of students were in very different places. We did have some paper tasks that were just paper-based, and the students would move the PECs onto move the PECs disorganized into organized, so it would be purely just an organizational task. So we did have some students on paper, but the reality of it is that at home it would be great if if your child can help participate in setting the table. Now, I'm going to give you just a general walkabout what I've done here, okay? And then you decide what works for you, if you can steal something from it, if it's just interesting information. And by all means, if I go through something here in this video and you have questions about it, reach out to me and I'll shape it up a little bit, okay? And just if you're at all curious, I'm actually, I took a little film before this of what my setup is for this. I'm proud of the way I kind of set it up. I'm not so skilled to keep the part of the gear out of the way, but if you can ignore this right here, that'd be cool, just as I go through the explanation. Okay, at the heart of this activity, I think if you're doing it from home, is there's a couple kind of key things that could help your child set the table. I think first off is there's two things. One, it's figuring out what the standard setup you would like to have for the table. And every family is going to have something a little bit different. But in class, what we had was something similar to this setup on the picture here. I guess I should also say we had the placemat around it. Okay, and then we also had the napkin. Okay, so that was the basic, oh geez, and I guess I gotta do that. We also had the glass. So hopefully that's fairly clear. So actually, I'll show you the picture up close so you can see what I did. Okay, so that's our basic setup. We had something like that. And we had a couple different versions of it. We had one that was photocopied. You can find one online and print it from there. What I'll do is I'll also send a link to you folks to a couple general templates that you can use. Now that's using something like this will get you practicing setting the table, but if you're looking to kind of boost it and have it work with your family, then one of the ways I would suggest is figure out what the setting looks like for your family. So it would mean, get a napkin that you want used, and then get a set of cutlery that you want used, and let your child do it. Let your child set it up. So typically in cutlery setup, at least from the restaurant perspective, the cutlery setup is always from the outside in as far as utility. So for example, you might have an extra salad spoon on the outside here. So in this case, we've got a big spoon, we've got a fork, we have the knife, and just realizing, I'll grab a quick plate just to help us out here. Is one of the beauties of working in your own kitchen. Here we go. I don't have any productions assistants to help me out. Okay, so there I have a plate on there. Now, again, whatever you use in your family, whatever you use, we're not gonna do another take, we're gonna go for it. Whatever you use in your family, just consistently use it so that your child can consistently see and practice the setup, okay? So whatever it is, you just want to keep on using the same one. I recognize that you could have a dinner setup or you could have a breakfast setup. You could have a lunch setup. I think it's fine to have different setups. Absolutely. You know your child, whether or not they can sort of, their agility to be able to shift between one setup or the other. What it might come down to is just figuring out what's a nice kind of middle ground. Start with that, or start with one meal that they would actually set things up on. So in this case, you know, the plate, you might say, well, we don't generally need the spoon, but we're always going to work on having a fork, a knife, the napkin, the plate, the glass, and the placemat. Now, the purpose, you can go from this, you have a couple of launch points. You could, you know, do one and then try and get your child to replicate what you have here. In the past, I've also mentioned, this was in another video talking about when you're organizing your shelf, you could take a picture of this and include it on your child's technology, okay? So if they have some technology, you could include it on here. So you would always have what the table setting looked like. And of course, once you took the picture, you could also print out that picture. So backtrack a little bit, figure out what kind of a standard place setting would work for you. If you want to level it up, you could have different ones, but I would definitely have some sort of a jig or a template for your child to follow. And all that means is you have a picture, you have a drawing, you have something that they can look at to set the table, okay? So that's this setting. Let me get my stuff just out of the way. I definitely realized that I crushed over my tools underneath, but that's okay. So in class what I had set up was I actually had a tablecloth, and I used one table specifically to practice the table setting, okay? And what I had on each of what I had on the tablecloth, so it was a rectangular table, and I had a rectangular tablecloth that went over the sides of it. And so the student could work on setting the table on the corners of the tablecloth. So when I set the tablecloth on the table, what I did is I took a permanent black marker, and all I did was mark off the corners, just like that, just the corners all the way around. The reason I did that is because then when the tablecloth was set on the table, we practiced making sure that these little corners matched the corner of the table. So you knew that you had your tablecloth set fairly centered, okay? On the tablecloth, and to be honest, I'm not in any instance saying that you need to start drawing and marking up and ruining your own linen at home. You can start with, you could use a plastic tablecloth for this, something that you could pick up from a dollar store. If you wanted to, you can skip the tablecloth altogether. Again, these are just some ideas about how we sort of structured the learning towards setting the table. Here's what I did, okay? So again, I colored the edges, so when I laid it over the table, I knew that I had to make sure these corners matched the edge of the table. And it was quite stunning visually because the tablecloth that I was using was red, and the black marker that I put on it was right at the edges, so the student always saw whether or not that was shifted right. The second thing that I did on the tablecloth is I took the same black marker and I did a crosshair on it like this. So I did up the center of it, all the way here, and then I did this as well, across the middle side. So it basically divided the actual tablecloth up into 4 quadrants. And then I took it one step further and I actually wrote right on each one. I did a number 1, I did a number 2, I did a number 3, I did a number 4. So now what I have is the tablecloth set on the table, the direction of activity. We knew we were going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And what we used in class, as we had a bin with all the equipment in it, so we had all the settings ready to go for whatever the meal was. And we actually had in the kit, a template for how we want it set. So with the tablecloth, the placemat on the placemat, and then you have the plate in the center, the knife just to the left of the plate, the fork and then the spoon on top of the napkin just to the right of the plate, and at the top we had the cup. this is up to you. Again, this comes back to whatever the setting that works best for your meal, for your family, go for it. To backtrack a little bit, by having some sort of a template to follow, and that template can be, you take a picture of the table setting that you want to use, you have that quick go-to image of how to set the table. Definitely, you can include images on your child's iPad or technology. If they are, and if you are comfortable with them carrying the iPad with them, they could bring it to the table and they would actually be able to look at each setting. It also saves on paper if you want to look at it that way. I mean, there is an eco-friendly way to do programming like this, okay? The tablecloth in itself, I marked off the corners so I knew exactly where it would fit on the table, and I thought it was a good activity to work with the students to have them work on some of their large muscle control and sort of like be able to set it on the edges of the table. If your table was round, you could do the exact same thing. It would just mean you would be making round marks around the outside, and you definitely could still do, the 4 quadrants of your table. Now, of course, this is a table for 4. Every family is different. You decide what the division would be. This was just a nice geometric, even distribution of it. Finally, if you are going to go this route, one of the things you can do is number off each of the place settings. You could go. You don't have to use numbers. Numbers here was just an easy start at 1, start at 2, start at 3. Sorry, start at 1, go to 2, then 3, and then 4. You could put pictures of your family members. You could put names. You could sort of mix it up, turn that into a bit of an activity. So it could be numbers one time and then it's a counting task. It could be the written words and then it's a reading task, which could also mean you could shift from this, which is completely picture-based, to having the list of words that they need to use. So you could have a list that says, on here it could say placemat, napkin, fork, knife, spoon, and as they go to their bin to get their equipment or they go to the cupboard to get the equipment, perfect. This table setting also works well with the other activity that I did in the past as far as cleaning out the cupboards, because in cleaning out the cupboards and having pictures of the cupboards, then your child will also get to know where stuff is in the cupboards. So you can use the pictures from the cleaning to remind them where the cups are, where the forks are, where the spoons are, if they're still working on that, okay? I hope there's something from this that you can steal and use at home. If you have any questions about the setup for this, or modifying it, or just could it be done in this way too, please get in touch with me. I'd love to talk this one out a little bit more, all right? So, have a fantastic weekend. I look forward to talking to you again soon. I'll do a little hello. Oh, hello. Great to see you. Take care. Have a good weekend.